Okay, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Just open my. Sorry, guys, Zoom on the. We put the Zoom on the.
Yeah, just put it on. Want to put in my.
If you're sitting in the back, we'd love for you to move up front and fill all the spaces towards the front. It would be great if you could come fill in the spaces over here and over there. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I know it's not.
Okay, we have some unfortunate news. Due to Daji's health, we regret to inform you that he will not be joining us today, and he sends his regards. We will now be having Joshua Pollock, the author of The Heartfulness Way, joining us for a heartfulness guided relaxation, meditation, and Q&A session. We now like to invite our very own Peggy Lee to the stage to guide us through a relaxation and introduce Joshua. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's my honor to introduce Joshua to you all today. So if you're not familiar with Joshua Pollock, he co-authored The Heartfulness Way, which is a guide of how to incorporate heartfulness into your daily life. It's a book that released a couple years back, and he co-authored the book with Daji. Joshua now speaks about the benefits of meditation on platforms like ABC, NBC, and CBS, where we can reach all kinds of platforms and all kinds of people worldwide. He's currently the executive director of Heartfulness at Work, which is a wellness initiative providing tools for stress management. Stress management into corporate institutions. Before his present journey of bringing heartfulness and meditation and wellness to people everywhere, Joshua taught and performed the violin. He served on several Bollywood films orchestras, including A. Rahman's Gajani and Dilli Six. If we could give him a warm welcome, that would be wonderful.
Hi, Joshua. Thank you for being with us today. My name is Peggy. I will be leading the relaxation before our meditation with Joshua tonight. I know that we just had a super amazing concert, and I'm supposed to relax everyone after that, so I'll try my best. And I know that a lot of people here have been meditating for a really long time, so thank you for allowing me the opportunity to lead this relaxation for you. So we'll start by closing our eyes gently and softly. We'll start by wiggling our toes and feel the healing energy of the earth through our toes, our feet, and our ankle. Relax your lower legs and feel the healing energy around your knees. Relax your thighs. Look deeply, relax your hips, your waist, and your stomach. And feel the relaxation on your back, from your tailbone to your neck. We'll relax our chest and shoulders. And feel your shoulders completely melting away. And relax your arms. Feel every muscle on your arms. And feel the healing energy through your hand and your fingertips. Relax your neck and move the attention to your face. Relax your jaw, your mouth, your nose, your eyes, your earlobes, your forehead, and all the way to the top of your head. And feel your body completely relaxed. If there's any part of your body that is tense, in pain, or unwell, feel it being immersed in the healing energy of the earth. And stay there for a little longer. When you're ready, move your attention to your heart. Feel the light and love within your heart. Stay quiet and still, and slowly become absorbed from within. Stay absorbed for as long as you like, until you're ready to come out.
That's all.
Thank you so much, Joshua, for that beautiful meditation session. We're very gracious to have you here with us today, Joshua. Thank you so much for that beautiful meditation session. Just to introduce our conference and what we're here doing, we're doing an Unwind 3-day conference, a youth conference. We've had people who have experienced heartfulness meditation, people who have not, flying from all over the country here to be with us today. We've had a number of guest speakers and a concert earlier today, so we've been through the motions of people being excited, reflecting, getting in, like connecting internally and externally with other youth. We even had a graffiti wall. But we had some youth write down some questions for you today, and we would be really happy if you could answer those for us. So I'll pass it to Peggy, who will start us off with our first question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joshua, for being with us today. Before we dive into the questions, we're wondering if there's anything that you would like to share with us. Doesn't have to be, but if there is, we're happy to hear it. If not, we can go straight into the questions. Sorry, I think we're having a little audio issue.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
I was muted. Okay, I'll keep that in mind, and if anything occurs to me while we're doing this back and forth, then I'll share it. Okay?
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds good. So our first question is from participant Anisha from Palo Alto. And her question is, in a world that often equates worth with achievement and material success, how can one pursue growth and strive for meaningful contributions without losing the essence of contentment, gratitude, and detachment from the constant pull of more? How do we know when the pursuit of more serves our growth, and when does it distance us from true contentment?
Yeah, so it's a pretty fundamental question, huh? Um, yeah, I remember some years back. So I've been practicing this heartfulness since I think November. That's just yeah, November 1st, I think, 2002. Okay, and I started in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm not from Ohio. I'm from Maine, but I was going to school there. And I remember some years later, a friend of mine another heartfulness practitioner. Now, a few years later, I moved to London. I was in grad school there, and this guy came and stayed with me for a few weeks while he was looking for an apartment. I'd met him there was a seminar like this kind of in Denmark, and we were hanging out there. And then he showed up in London. He said, "Can I stay here for a couple of weeks while I find a place?" I said, "Yeah." He was going to London School of Economics or something. And so he was about to embark on a career which was going to potentially make him boatloads of money. And he was going fully into economics. But inside himself, he wasn't, his aspiration was elsewhere. Like you could say his ambition was focused towards, a career in finance and everything that all the trappings that went along with it. But in terms of his aspiration, it was definitely, he had a spiritual aspiration as a core thing, as a primary thing. And he was also feeling a little bit conflicted about that. So I remember talking to him about this, and he was a big fan of the complete works of Swami Vivekananda. And those are amazing books in case you're not aware of them. You should read them. And I had it there, and we kind of found some passage there where Vivekananda was talking about almost how it's a duty of people to, um, to make money, right? And to go into the world and do all these things that we kind of associate with materialism sometimes. But he was talking about the motivation behind that, and how if your motivation is to do that, to support yourself so that you can serve other people, so that you can help other people, so that you can use whatever strengths or whatever position or whatever resources you have to somehow contribute to a better world, then it becomes a positive thing. I think that with a lot of things, it's not really about um, the act itself, but what matters is your intention with it, right? The intention that you've placed behind it, right? If I'm deciding that I want to be a, quintillionaire or something, right? I want to just have so much money. And why do I want to have that money? Because I want to have status, because I want everyone to admire me, because I want to have a yacht and like a bigger yacht and a mansion and this and that. There will be a limit, like there'll be a limit to how much contentment that can bring me. Like you can get so much contentment externally, and then it cuts off there. And getting a third yacht isn't going to bring you more contentment that you already had, or getting a fourth mansion isn't going to get you more contentment than you already had, right? So there's a limit there. So if you're trying for some sort of, if your track is there, you're going to find limitation, right? And so it becomes a sort of not so great of a return on investment. This is my opinion. But if, on the other hand, your intentions are a bit more, if you understand what the source of contentment is, what the real source of happiness is, what the real source of peace is, then your relationship with materiality will be completely different, and then it won't be burdened by a kind of selfish or self-centered intention behind it. And then you'll be a lot freer in how you use resources in life, I think. So I think it starts off, it doesn't have to be this constant balancing act between, okay, now I'm making money, now I'm, I don't know, in politics or in business or something like that. And now I'm feeling the pull towards being very attached to this. No, if you're very clear with yourself from the beginning, what the goal of your life is, and how that goal manifests in every moment that you're living, not just the theoretical goal, but how does that apply to me right now? If you're very clear on what you really want, you know, then that, I think, kind of inoculates you from the dangers that you're talking about in that question, you know. And then once you have that inoculation, then you have no limits on what you can do, I think, materially speaking, because none of it is going to be a danger to you. The only danger of materiality isn't a danger that exists in the world, but it's a danger that exists in yourself because of you want it. That danger is an inner danger from you. It's nowhere outside, right? The danger isn't in the mansions or the money. The danger is your own desire for the mansions and the money and this and that. If you can somehow deal with that, then those things can't harm you. This is what I believe.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I think you touched on a really key point of finding and sourcing that from within, which resonates really well from our previous speaker. Blondie also touched this point as well. So I think it resonates super well with that. And then we'll turn to our next question.
Our next question comes from an anonymous attendee. The question is, how do we forgive those who have hurt us, whether that be ourselves or others? And how can we move on from those situations happily and move on with that forgive and forget mentality?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, you were supposed to be here with Daji tonight. And lately it seems like I only ever talk to people when Daji was supposed to be there. So like anytime I talk to people, like I know it's like a group of disappointed people. But so you touched on this forgive and forget idea. I've heard him say many times, and it's actually a truth. Like forgiving is wonderful. Forgiving is necessary for your own health. Forget about the other person. It's not for the other person's sake that you forgive. It's for your own sake that you forgive, right? But forgetting, that's not wise to forget. I really think that that's what Daji would tell you if he was here today. You can forgive something emotionally. That means there's no burden that you're carrying inside anymore. You're fine. You're absolutely fine. But literally forgetting what happened, first of all, you can't forget. But second of all, this is speaking to the two types of memory that we have. Now, if you're practicing heartfulness already, I'm sure you've learned a few techniques. You've learned meditation, you've learned relaxation, you've learned cleaning technique. Has everybody at least heard of the cleaning technique here? Raise your hands if you have heard of the cleaning technique. Wow, okay, that's a lot of people here. I think almost everybody. So what are we cleaning when we're doing the cleaning technique, right? Do you know, can someone say? Maybe you don't have microphones, I don't know. But anyone want to volunteer? What are we cleaning?
Impurities.
Impurities meaning what, do you think? What kind of impurities and complexities?
It's basically so every situation that we go through leaves an impression on us. So we're cleaning that.
And it isn't the situation itself that leaves the impression. That's the key thing. It's your reaction to the situation that creates the impression, right? That's what we're cleaning. So all kinds of situations can be there. You know, you can have 3 different people in the same situation, One of them is just oblivious, seemingly oblivious, emotionally speaking, doesn't bother them. Another person seems very, very deeply affected. And it's the same situation they're in, but one person is deeply affected, the other one is completely unaffected. So you can't blame the situation, right? So it's about our reaction to the situation. So that is what the impressions are. They are essentially an emotional residue of that reaction that we had initially at the time that we formed the impression. Right? We formed the impression. There's an emotional reaction, positive perhaps. This is great. I love this. This is amazing. The best thing that's ever happened. Right? Positive. Emotional reaction nonetheless. Or negative. Terrible. Right? Doesn't have to be extreme, like wonderful or terrible. It can be something, there's a whole spectrum, right? But now some kind of or some degree of residue from that reaction remains with you in your heart. This is the theory of impressions or samskaras that I'm trying to convey, right? It remains within you somehow. And that ends up functioning as a kind of subliminal director as you navigate through life, right? So in other words, suppose that when I'm a kid, there's some teacher in my school, got, I don't know, like a big bushy mustache or something. And this teacher is one of those really cruel teachers. And so you end up having a bad experience with that person. You feel very bad in that person's presence, right? So that you have that reaction, it goes inside. Later on, years later in life, now you see somebody looks the same big mustache, right? Now that person, completely different individual, right? That person has never done anything bad to you before. Maybe it's just a great, wonderful human being. Nevertheless, and you may not even remember why, but somehow you don't like that person when you see them. You're not maybe consciously associating them with that teacher, but something you just don't like that person's face. And maybe you don't want to be around that person. So that's why the presence of an impression inside us can create bias in us to other individuals, right? Where we're not seeing them for who they are or seeing a situation for what it is, but we're seeing it through the filters of our past experience, and more specifically, through the filters of our past emotions, right? So these become really like filters that prevent us from really witnessing reality as it is in front of our faces. So when we do the cleaning, right? When we do cleaning, the idea there is to remove that emotional residue and burden from the past, right? So remove those things that cause bias in us towards or against situations and people, right? That's at the emotional level. But forgetting about the emotion itself, memory of events, cleaning doesn't get rid of our memory, right? Cleaning doesn't remove because you need the memory, what Daji calls existential memory, meaning memory of that such and such a thing happened, right? You have to have a memory that such and such a thing occurred. What would you do in school if you came home and did your cleaning and then just forgot everything you learned in class? So that's not how cleaning works, right? You have to have that because that's how we kind of come to understand the world and learn things, and it's a necessary thing. So when we do the cleaning and it's on our own, that takes care of whatever impressions that we've accumulated today. Just today. You go home, you do your cleaning, that removes today's accumulation. You go to a trainer and sit with them. There's also cleaning. The trainer is performing some kind of cleaning on you at that time. That's not just today. That is much, much further into the past. That is Years, 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 you can say. Months, years, weeks, whatever. Right? So in this kind of way, through this sort of magical system, you can remove a lot of that at once. Now, where's the need for forgiveness? If somebody has wronged me, this person's wronged me. In 1983, someone wronged me, then somebody wronged me in 2018. Just with one stroke, remove a lot of this stuff and forgiving every small thing that's ever happened. Because how many people have done things which require forgiveness? I mean, so many people, right? Whether it's small or large. Even somebody who looks at you in a disrespectful way, or somebody who looks at you, but they're thinking in a disrespectful way. That's something that, they should apologize for. And maybe they don't apologize for it, and you recognize that they should apologize and they don't. And there you go thinking, how can I forgive them if they themselves are not taking responsibility? If they themselves are not holding themselves accountable, then I have to hold them accountable, right? Some idea of justice comes into play there, right? But they're not tortured by it. You're tortured by it. At an individual level, and I mean at an individual, I'm not talking about all of the samskaras, all of the impressions that you've accumulated during your lifetime now. But I'm saying one thing, let's say, comes up. All of a sudden, one day you remember something, and you get angry at somebody. Now, there's an opportunity for you to remove that particular impression. There is an opportunity. You can work at the cleaning that I described to you, it's such a general thing. You're not paying attention to one particular impression or another particular impression. It's all just general. Everything, one of those like fire sales, everything must go, right? But when one particular thing catches hold of you and you feel, this person has wronged me, then you have the completely different way of cleaning. That completely different way of cleaning is actually consciously letting that thing go. And when you're faced with that situation, then the way to remove that impression is through forgiving, being generous at heart. It is just a generosity that allows you to, it isn't to forgive somebody who's wronged you. It's not saying, well, somehow they didn't wrong me and everything's okay. No, it's true. They have done something that requires forgiveness, right? It is something wrong. But it's just that you're being generous to them. You're being a bit bigger. You don't have to go to that person and say, I forgive you. You don't have to communicate to that person at all. There's no need for you to go and create some sort of relationship with that person. It's a completely inner thing that you are doing within yourself for the sake of your own freedom, because that's what it gives you. So that's a very sort of long and broad answer to that question, I suppose.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that perspective with us. We're wondering if you are still good on time to take one or two more questions.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So our next question is actually an extension of the last one. We're wondering, how do we keep a finer balance between emotional regulation versus emotional suppression? So use letting go as an example. I think sometimes we find ourselves applying letting go and we're able to clean that impression and truly letting it go, versus sometimes it seems like it's used as almost a coping mechanism. We say that, okay, we're letting this go and kind of shove it into the corner, but that emotion pops up later on. And it wasn't a genuine, true letting go. It was more of a suppression at the moment as a means to compartmentalize. so that you can be efficient at the time of moving on with your life and, doing like be efficient at work or taking care of other things. But that wasn't truly completely letting go or being cleansed. So how do we catch that nuance and doing a better job at genuine emotional regulation and cleaning instead of using that as a coping mechanism?
I hear what you're saying. I I think it's all just about being very honest with yourself, you know, and knowing what you're doing. I mean, even if you're coping and you need to cope, but know that you're coping. Don't pretend that somehow you've transcended, the human condition. When I was a kid, um, it was mentioned when I was introduced that I used to be a violinist, right? So playing the violin requires hours and hours of practice a day, right? So I'd practice, you know, 3 to 5 hours in a day when I was in high school. And so many things are in your swimming around your head when you're a teenager, especially, and really any age. And so I remember some advice that my teacher gave me at that time. She said, it's fine. Anything comes to your mind, you're trying to focus on this. Something else comes to your mind, seems really pressing. It's okay. What you do is you write it down. You write it down for later. So just so you realize you don't have time to deal with it right now, you write it down for later. You promise yourself you'll think about this later. You'll deal with this later. It's quite different than suppressing it, saying, no, no, no. You're acknowledging it, but you're also acknowledging that this isn't the time. I'm sitting in my office cubicle. I can't now have, this sort of moment where I just let everything go. No, I have to remain focused on my life, but acknowledge it somehow. If it helps you to write it down, if it helps you to make a note of it on your phone, come back to it later. If it's something that is calling you to come back to it. So I just mentioned that because, I used to use that when I was a kid to help me stay focused on the task that I had to stay focused on without, ignoring things that were coming up inside myself, which maybe demanded attention or maybe sometimes didn't also. But nevertheless, they were there. I think it's really, I don't know how to say this. I'm sorry, but I feel it's really important to be very, very true to how you feel. And whether that is about, you don't pretend that you suddenly become so spiritual, that nothing is affecting you. And meanwhile repress all these things down deep inside you. That's not what it's about at all. And I think sometimes I just want, everybody should understand that though you are being exposed here to a particular, let's say, worldview, a particular philosophy, right? This is a process now where you have to integrate that with your own understanding of the world from your own experience. And they shouldn't be two different things, you see, right? So this is another thing that I've heard from Daji's mouth, where sometimes we end up adopting a belief system or a philosophy which seems very true to us. It resonates with us in some way, and we say, yes, I agree with that. And you kind of accept that in yourself. But at the same time, it's something that you haven't ever experienced yourself, some parts of it, right? And because of that, you end up sort of wearing it like a piece of clothing. You wear this belief and you're at the conscious level, right? and and you do that to repress the doubt that you have about it. You know, you have doubt in it at some level, which you repress by, at the surface level, having very strong belief in it. Does that make sense to you? I know I'm speaking a little bit abstractly. Sometimes the stronger the belief means the stronger the doubt. I think that it's a very important thing, as long as you're involved in a spiritual system, any spirit, whether it's heartfulness or anything else. If you're involved in any spiritual system, it's very important for you to do the practice. Because if you don't do the practice, but you continue to believe in the system or believe in the philosophy, you're going to arrive at a schism where the philosophy itself isn't resonating with your experience. Do you understand that? When you don't practice, you're not having the experience that people speak about, you know, in regards to heartfulness. You're not experiencing the things that, let's say, Babuji has written in his books. You're not experiencing the things that Daji is speaking about, right? But you accept this as a belief that this is my worldview. I've adopted the heartfulness philosophy as my worldview. But inside, it's not resonating with you because you don't practice. You're not allowing yourself to have that experience of it, is what I mean. So then all of a sudden, you start having a big gap inside yourself and kind of a fight inside yourself, where at a certain moment, if that continues, you'll definitely rebel against the entire thing and say, this is BS. I don't believe this at all. And you just walk away from it. That's an inevitability. It's an inevitability if you continue to believe in something without doing the things like the practice that will allow you to have an experience of it and allow you to resonate with it. So I would say don't have a belief system at all if you're not going to practice. Don't entertain Sahaj Marg philosophy, heartfulness philosophy, if you don't intend to, if you're not going to practice it. It'll disturb you inside if you do that. If you're going to practice, then you can go ahead and read and learn and understand about it. But if you're only going to read about it or hear about it, eventually you'll start to resent that if you're not practicing. So that's the one thing I would say.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And just before we wrap up here, is there any final words you want to share with our youth today? I know that's a very open question.
It's a very open question. Any other specific questions? I don't think I can. I think I just did, actually.
We have one more for you. So this also comes from an anonymous attendee. But there'll be such situations in life where we don't know why things happen and we're maybe not happy with the outcome, but we tell ourselves this happened for a reason. Like there's some higher being at work and this just happened and I'm going to deal with this. And how do we deal with that or approach that uncertainty when these things happen? What is the best or your guidance to that? How should we approach it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, regardless of whether some higher being gave this to us as a gift or not, you know, I think, what can I say? There's some uncertainty is all in how you take it. You know, I remember a couple of years ago, we had a nice discussion of this. Naren Kinney and I, we were in Seattle talking about this topic of uncertainty. We had a really nice discussion there. And I remember we were talking about how I mean, who likes uncertainty? Does anyone here like uncertainty? Maybe somebody does. I don't see anybody's hands. So you must have good lives. That's the only thing. Because if you have a terrible life and you hate every moment of it, you would like a little uncertainty. You would like that to change, right? Let's say you're locked up in San Quentin, right? And you have to be there for the next 40 years. That seems pretty certain. Your fate seems pretty certain now. Wouldn't you like a little bit of uncertainty? Definitely. But if things are reasonably good in life, then uncertainty becomes a scary thing because you're afraid that things will become worse. So it's actually not the uncertainty itself that's bad. It's how we're judging our present situation and how much we're holding on to that, how much we're open to change. It's all about that. It's a judgment that we're applying, that causes the uncertainty. There's this, this Heartfulness Way book. There's one place in the book where Daji quotes the old Chinese story. If you've read the book, you'll know what I'm talking about. The thing with the horse and the farmer. I don't remember what chapter it's in, to be honest, but it's in there somewhere. But the basic idea is that there's a whole series of events that happen. And each one, every other event looks like a tragedy, and every other event looks like a stroke of luck or a stroke of fortune. And it seems that every tragedy that happens leads to something good, and every good thing that happens unexpectedly leads to a tragedy of some nature or something bad, not a tragedy necessarily, right? But the whole point is that there's a whole sequence of events that's leading somewhere. The thing is that in the moment, you never know where it's leading. But because we don't know where it's leading, because the ultimate outcome is uncertain, right? Then, basically what it comes down to in the end is if we're a glass half full or glass half empty type of person. Are we assuming that it's going to lead to our downfall? Are we assuming that it's going to lead to something wonderful? I think the best way is to assume nothing there, but simply just be open to what happens, because everything that can possibly happen, as Babuji says in the commentary, I think of the 7th maxim. I suggest you read his commentary on the 10 maxims. But he talks about how situations that we encounter are, for the most part, Daji would qualify it. He wouldn't say 100% of situations, he would qualify it and say for the most part. Situations that we encounter, through them, we have the possibility of shedding our inner burdens. Whether it's a good experience, whether it's a bad experience, if we're able to move through that experience with a minimum of emotional reaction, then the samskara that was in us is able to dissolve through that experience. And we shed the impression. We move toward a liberated state, a truly spiritually liberated state. That's called boga, right? Called boga is what it is when you go through some experience in life, whether it's good or bad, whether it's something to enjoy or something to suffer, right? Whether an experience is good or bad, you move through that experience, you have that experience without being trapped by that experience, but in some way you're unburdened through that experience. That's called boga, and that's one of the 2 or 3 methods by which we remove our conditioning, by which we remove our samskaras, which condition our view, our consciousness, our actions in life. So, not everything that we experience we can call boga in that sense, right? But nevertheless, this is what Babaji writes about. So in that case, he says even the acts that are done against us, the person who's done those things, when he's talking about, we see come back to forgiveness again, because he says, be not revengeful, right? These things, he says, that person who has done this thing to you, has rendered the service of a true friend, unknowingly, but it has happened through them. Because through it, something inside you has been released. I remember, Daji being very impressed, something beyond impressed. Impressed is too small a word for his feelings toward Ramakrishna Paramahansa, the guru of Swami Vivekananda. That's another subject entirely. But I remember him giving the example, Ramakrishna, he died from throat cancer. I don't know if you knew that. Ramakrishna died from throat cancer. Ramana Maharshi, the South Indian Vedantic saint, he also died from throat cancer. And both of them, as they were sick, they were just seen smiling away, laughing away. Everything was they were so light and joyful during that period of illness, both of them. So were they in pain? They must have been in pain. Were they suffering? They weren't suffering. They were not suffering. So there's a difference between pain and suffering. And I think that's a key thing. There's 2 or 3 definitions of yoga given in the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, that song of that dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. Krishna gives 2 or 3 definitions of yoga. One of them is that yoga is separation from union with pain. Separation from union with pain. Self-explanatory. Along the same lines, in Babuji's message, I think 1982 in Surat, he gave, I think, Daji's favorite message of all Babuji's messages that he gave. These are in volume 3 of Complete Works of Ramchandra. You can check that out. I'm sure all of these things I'm mentioning are even there in the ashram. That starts with the phrase that, as we've seen, when we open the book, we find it says, miseries are all around for the embodied one. That's the first line of the message. Daji, a couple of years ago, or maybe last year, he told me that this is not an accurate translation. If you go back to the original Hindi, it didn't say that miseries are all around for the embodied one. What Babuji really said was that difficulties are all around for the embodied one. Whether it is a misery or not depends on if we make it into a misery. Depends on it depends on our reaction to that difficulty. So if we master yoga and we separate from union with pain, as Krishna says in the Gita, we'll still encounter difficulties, but that difficulty will not be a misery. That difficulty will not be a suffering for us. Then we can laugh away like Ramakrishna, like Ramana Maharshi, and we'll never be able to escape these vacillations, of happiness and sadness and things like that in life. But this equanimity and balance inside us and this lightness inside us, there we can somehow rise above it at the same time and not be sucked in by it or entrapped by it. And I think this is obviously what yoga is all about, because Krishna has defined it as such.
Thank you so much for your time today, Joshua. Could we get another round of applause for Joshua and his beautiful responses to our questions?
Thank you. It's really nice to be here, and it's reminding me that I need to come to visit Fremont again.
Yes,
well.
we'd love to have you here.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Great.
I
Nice being with you this evening.
Thank
And
you.
have a good rest of the seminar.
appreciate it.